When you ask Americans where their food comes from, it's surprising to know that only a few to little Americans know about the condition that their food is produced in. According to prnewswire.com, there's about 72% of consumers that know nothing or very little about farming or ranching. That 72% of consumers are not aware of what these conditions are, that these animals are raised in, slaughtered in, what chemicals are sprayed on the crops to feed them, or the general process of getting their food from farm to table. To answer why people don't see where their food is coming from, it's because less than 2% of the population in America live on or near farms. Another explanation as to why people don't know where their food is coming from is because often consumers of food coming from factory farms will not research the food that they are purchasing daily. Let's take a look at Smithfield Farms specifically. The slogan that is on Smithfield Farms' homepage on their website reads, "At Smithfield Foods, we are guided every day by 3 simple principles: responsibility, operational excellence, and innovation, in order to accomplish our goal of being both the biggest and the best in our industry." Their slogan is something that people want to hear to make them feel happier about where their food is coming from, knowing the goals of their company. Nothing about the slogan tells you that they are constantly mutilating animals or keeping them in cruel conditions. That's something that they should be honest about. Their slogan is just about being the biggest and best factory farm that they could be. In reality, according to PETA, the female pigs that are in these farms are always forced into pregnancy, having pigs reproduce as much as they can for their lifetime. When these piglets are first born, they're savagely mutilated by removing their tails, teeth, and ears. When researching other factory farms that produce beef and chicken products, anyone would find that these conditions are often similar. Chickens are kept in crowded barns with dead and rotting chickens. Calves are separated from their mothers at birth and often kept in restricted areas, leaving them with not much room to move. These conditions are horrible and overlooked.
2017, Glenn Greenwald reported on an FBI-led manhunt that spanned nationwide and was focused on the recapturing of 2 pigs named Lily and Lizzie. The pigs were from a farm in Utah up until they were kidnapped by an animal rights group known as DXE, which stands for Direct Action Everywhere. The group staged an open rescue, which is when they go inside the facility and document the horrific living conditions that these animals endure. They then released the footage and almost used the public's opinion like a weapon to take down these horrific farms, while in the process they're also saving these animals too. Many people were wondering why the FBI decided to get involved in the first place. Well, that was because of how much public attention was being drawn from this event. The second reason the FBI got involved was because the farm was owned and operated by a Chinese multinational corporation, and all that bad publicity wouldn't look very good for U.S. and Chinese relations.
Like the United States, each country has their own way of handling animals in food production. Our neighbor Canada has federal animal cruelty laws that were originally enacted in the Canadian Criminal Code of 1892. Since Canada consists of provinces, each province has the ability to enact and prosecute animal cruelty through anti-cruelty regulations. These regulations have the power of law, but don't result in a criminal record. While each province has their legislation to fit the needs of their area, many of them have similar provisions. Many provisions make it a regulatory offense to cause an animal to be in distress. The humane handling and slaughtering of food animals is the responsibility of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and anyone who handles live animals like transporters and operators. Canadian law requires all federally registered slaughterhouses to make sure all species of food animals are handled and slaughtered humanely. These requirements take effect the second the animal arrives at the facility. Now let's travel to England. The United Kingdom was the first country to implement laws protecting animals. The first general animal protection law, though, came about in 1911 called the Protection of Animals Act and has been updated since. This protection law outlines the type of inhumane treatment done to any animal that someone can be charged for and deprived of animal ownership. More recently, in 2006, the Animal Welfare Act was put into place. This act establishes penalties for engaging in certain activities that are considered detrimental to animal welfare. Activities include causing an animal unnecessary suffering, mutilating an animal's body, or administering a harmful substance to an animal. Now let's go on to Australia. Since Australia consists of different states and territories, each area has their own rules regarding animals. There is an overall general rule, though, that states state and territory governments are responsible for animal production and welfare laws and their enforcement. The states and territories set and enforce animal welfare standards through administration of state legislation for animal welfare or the prevention of animal cruelty. Going a bit deeper into Australia, let's look at Western Australia, who has an Animal Welfare Act of 2002. Their Animal Welfare Act includes all live amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals other than humans. It also includes companion animals, native animals, livestock, and animals used for research and teaching. It intends to promote and protect the welfare, safety, and health of animals. Now let's go to the Philippines. They actually have an Animal Welfare Act, too, of 1998. The goal of their Welfare Act is to protect and promote the welfare of all animals by supervising and regulating the establishment and operations of all facilities used for breeding, maintaining, keeping, treating, or trading animals as objects of trade or household pets. Companies need to first have a certificate of registration from the Bureau of Animal Industry to prove that they are fit to house animals. The director of the Bureau supervises and regulates the establishment to make sure they are keeping up with the regulation. Punishments for not following the rules include imprisonment between 6 to 2 years or a fine between 1,000 pesos and 5,000 pesos.
Humans, for thousands of years, have had a very close relationship with animals. We evolved alongside them and domesticated them to assist us in daily life. Many groups around the globe revere animals and adhere to non-violence policies and vegetarian lifestyles to avoid harming them. These groups include Hindus, Buddhists, Jainists, and other ethnic groups throughout Asia. Pythagoras, a Greek mathematician and philosopher born in the 6th century, known for influencing Plato and Aristotle, was an early proponent for vegetarianism in the West. He had great respect for animals and also believed that they had souls. Fast forward a couple thousand years. The British Parliament passes the Act to prevent the cruel and improper treatment of cattle. However, this act preceded the first animal protection legislation 200 years earlier in Ireland. This legislation protected sheep from rough wooling practices. Although these acts were passed and enforced before the start of the Industrial Revolution, they were still concerned with maintaining profits and not as much so concerned with the rights of animals and protecting them. It wasn't until the late 20th century when organized coalitions of animal rights activists took action against corporate practitioners of animal inhumanity that animal rights became a mainstream issue. From this point on, the popularity in the movement grew. Organizations such as the Animal Liberation Front launched a series of operations beginning in the 1970s and continuing onward to the present. They took a more militant approach to animal rights and adopted animal rights extremism, racking up millions of dollars in property damages, raiding animal test facilities, and assaulting animal researchers are among some of the actions taken by ALF. Some members who acted against inhumane corporate entities were let off the hook easy, while others were labeled as terrorists and given hard time. So, why is it that so many animal rights activists turn to animal rights extremism? Well, many people who choose to act in these rights groups do not decide overnight. Many try to begin activism at a grassroots level, but often encounter individuals who refuse to consider the consequences of factory farming and animal testing, even when facts are presented. In psychology, this is known as cognitive dissonance. Frustration stemming from the mainstream abidance to inhumane animal practices leads individuals to join extremist groups. From this, we can see a stigma in society about those involved in animal rights activism and extremist groups, that they are stubborn, argumentative, and prefer the well-being of animals over humans. When you consider the ethical dilemma they are faced with, it's hard not to empathize.